Hello and welcome to this Photo Story 3 slideshow. I'm going to take you through how to create a basic slideshow without bells and whistles so we can focus on getting a maximum return for minimum effort. And the first thing to do then is to make sure that you've got your images in a folder on the desktop and any music file ready to go, so you've got them to hand. I'm just going to click on my start bar, fire up Photo Story 3. We're going to begin a new story. Just click next. Now you need to import your images. You can either click and browse for the images, or probably easier is just to open the folder, select the images you want and drag them into the timeline on Photo Story 3. Okay, now the images will appear in a fairly random order in the timeline here. You can click and drag them around just to get the order correct. Obviously if you've got some kind of narrative, you want to make sure that that it makes sense logically. Here I think we've got just a few sample images just to make this slideshow a little bit quicker to turn around for demonstration purposes. We've got a few images from a Christmas light switch on, so obviously going to make sure that the lights are on at the end and not at the start. And once I'm happy with the order, if you want to make changes to the images, you can use some basic editing facilities here. Most commonly these kind of rotation devices. Just if you pull images in and they're on the side or what have you, you can flip them around like that. I'm broadly happy with this. It's not a sophisticated slideshow, as I say, but if I just click next to move on, you get prompted now to asking you whether you want to remove the black borders on the images. If you allow the computer to do that automatically, it sometimes does it quite arbitrarily and you might lose the subject of the photo in their crops. So what I tend to do is just continue without removing the black borders and make sure I do that at the next stage with my own moderation of the motion, the customization of the motion of the slides. At this point you can also add some text titles to each image and make some changes to that. Frankly, it's quite a basic function, so if you're doing any title work, I suggest doing it in Photoshop or something else before you drag them into here. But really, as we're trying to emphasize doing a quick and easy slideshow, I wouldn't bother with titles, so just click next to go to the next stage. At this point you can get down to the sort of business end of things really. If you choose any of the images in the timeline, then customize motion, which appears above the big preview, you can click specify start and end position, and this is where you tell the slideshow from which point you want to start, you want to view the image, so from point A to point B. So you can kind of set up an initial positioning, which might be a kind of wider shot, and then set a destination. So what will happen is when the picture's displayed, it'll move from point A to point B. So in this case it's going to zoom in. Obviously you can apply basic video kind of principles to how you manage these transitions. If you, for example, trying to convey emotion, you can zoom right in onto the eyes of the subject. If you want to emphasize isolation, you can pull right back and leave the figure looking isolated. If you are doing an action slideshow, so something like a football match, you can follow the motion of the ball just to try and kind of to reflect the action of the game. What you can also do here, which is quite useful, is under the duration, highlight the number of seconds to display the picture checkbox, and you can modify that to whatever sort of time frame you want. One thing I've talked about in lessons before is using the pace of the slideshow to reflect the subject matter. So if you've got something very somber, you probably want the pictures to display longer and be sort of more kind of emotive. If you've got something high action like a football match, like a fashion show, you want to have fairly quick transitions, so you probably have those photographs on for a shorter period. But also remember, you're telling a story. If you've got multiple faces in the photograph, like people are going to be logging onto the slideshow to see themselves, make sure you give that photo plenty of time to breathe. So if there's a big crowd, as a rule, display the photo for longer because people will be looking to pick themselves out. So once you're happy with the motion and duration, you can save that and go through the same process for each image. Note that I'm manually cropping out these black borders. Also you can use this checkbox here to set the end position to be the same as the start, and that just gives you an exact match for the size of the image if you just want to say pan without readjusting the size. Keep an eye on the duration of the picture because it will alter automatically based on what the application thinks, the length of time the application thinks you'll need to sort of convey the message. But broadly speaking, you can kind of set your own rules on that. Crowd shots again, I'm just going to pan right across fairly quickly, making sure I've got enough time for people to view it. Actually 8 seconds is fine. And I think this is the final image on this kind of basic sample, and I'm just going to zoom out there just to give some context to what they're doing. Okay, so I'm fairly happy with that. At this stage you can kind of use this preview button to view any or all of the images. Whichever image you highlight in the timeline, that'll be the one that it starts on. So if I click preview there, it should take a couple of seconds to load up, and then you get an idea of what we've done. So fairly straightforward there. Panning up, I've used the technique there where if you've got the kind of compelling central subject of the slideshow, it's sometimes worth starting slightly away from that subject and moving, panning up or zooming in to the key element of the picture, just because it kind of keeps people watching, I think. So assume you're happy with the motion there. Click next. This is where you can add music. There's two ways of doing it. You either create music using a very basic and probably fairly inadequate, I would say, music generator, which is built into Photostory 3, which is very, you can make some sort of moderations to it, but it's not up to scratch for a professional finish. What you probably want to do is select music. So I'm just going to select music, browse onto my desktop for this track that I've already got ready. In the timeline you'll see that there's now music laid over those images. Handily, Photostory 3 will crop that music to fit and fade out at the end, so it's not sophisticated audio editing by any means, but it certainly makes quite a simple and effective result. So at any point, again, we can preview this. I'm going to just have a check through to see I'm happy with it. And here we've used some copyright-free music, so there's no issues surrounding that. It's just a fairly simple tune just to give some context to these images. Hopefully it's more effective than just throwing together a few images in a gallery. So if you're happy with that, bear in mind at any point during this process you can use this back button to go back into previous stages if you want to update what you've done, add, remove images, make alterations to the timings, anything like that. Add, apply the sort of kind of additional features like captioning and things like that. You can go through and all of your subsequent changes are saved, so it's fairly handy for that. Once you're finished, it's just a case of outputting the files. So if you click next, you can save out the Photostory sort of end product as a WMV file, which you can then share via email, upload to YouTube, what have you, and that is a kind of finished version of the slideshow. What you also want to make sure you do is click the Save Project button. That'll just allow you to back up the project file. So if you do decide at a later date that you need to go back in, alter things, then you can. If you just have the WMV file, you won't be able to make changes, so you'd have to effectively start again if you wanted to revise what you'd done.